if you're going to claim African history, you got to claim all of it. Okay. If we're going to claim African history, we got to claim that some Africans sold Africans into slavery. We're going to have to claim that we conquered other African nations, that we conquered into Europe. I mean, you talk about the Moors, who were North Africans who ruled Spain for over 700 years and dominated them. So we have to claim that history as well. We can't
all of it.
We just can't just say that, everything we did was good and beautiful. No, we conquered nations, and we subjugated people, and we even the biblical narrative, as we spoke about earlier, talks about Egyptians enslaving Israelites. So people have slavery has always happened, probably not to the extent that we saw here in America, where people were being burned on stakes, and people were being hung in front of public, and people were treated as less than human. Probably not to that extent, but we do know that oppression has always been a part. I mean, as long as there's wealth and greed at stake and expansion, I think people have always done that from the beginning of man's history.
Absolutely. And I also think, looking at maybe what you said, like the American burning people on the stake, actually the European burning African on the stake, I think that tells, because you see, I think our historians have a huge responsibility in how they construct our narration. It helps people to understand where they are coming from. It is very important to know that the story is not only one side, it's both sides. Even the European, it's not that everything the Europeans have done in Africa is bad. They have also done good in Africa and to the African people. So when we tell the story, we need to tell it on both sides. Of course, it's true that when you are telling a pure neutral story, because there are not really neutral stories. That is why I'm saying that as a European are telling the story, the world story, telling it from the point of view of the European, we as Africans should not pretend to be represented in that story. It is not possible. Because if they represent you, they will be doing a disservice to themselves.
Because they don't know enough about it. They don't know. They don't know. You can't know. It's just like asking a European what was Native American culture. They're not going to know. They wiped most of those people out. So they don't particularly know everything. They know some things of what they're interacted with. And just like you can't look for certain sources on African history and find them based on European scholarship, you're just not going to find it. You're going to find it through the people of that land, the native people who pass stories down through their artifacts, through their monuments, through their structures. Africans told stories differently. Yes, we documented our history, and a lot of it you'll find in the British and the French Museum. You'll find a lot of African artifacts there, and you find African artifacts all over the world. So, people base things based off their own understanding of what they have been told, not what is the actual history of these people. Only these people can tell you that history.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is why I want to come back to what you were saying before. That is a beautiful thing that you said, that the African story is so documented, of course, in the context of the time that we have it today, which means that African people have the time now to tell their story of the time that we are experiencing. What have been our experience, at least in this last 500 years? We can't expect the European to tell that story. It is not possible. Or we tell that story, or that story remain untold, because we tell it differently, with our sentiment, with our feeling, with how we see it. That is how that story is going to be told. It's not going to be told by somebody who just imagine, maybe that's I slap you, I will tell you how you feel. You cannot tell me how I feel. I'm the only one that can tell you how I feel. That is why it is the only African people that can tell their story.
Exactly.
Now, coming to telling the story, in this particular story that you are working on, what would you say is the central message that you want to pass across?
The central message is that African history has been misrepresented, but also the story itself is just to show you, bring you into ancient Egypt. When we think about ancient Egypt, a lot of times we kind of look at all this mysticism and all of these, these people who built these pyramids. It's almost like we see them as magical people who weren't even really people, right? But the story, the context I painted it in, that these were spiritual people who were very intelligent, mastered science, mastered archaeology, mastered architecture, were masters of astrology, that these people were the masters of the elements as well, the masters of the weather, the masters of understanding different things, how the animals connect with human beings and all of these different things, the insects. I mean, you have a lot of Egyptians worshiping certain creatures as well, such as the black cat or the bombardier beetle. The respect for the nature Egyptians have. Even in fact, Egyptians put people to death for, killing a certain animal, a baboon or a certain animal that it was of great reverence to them. So it's a lot of great history to connect back to understand that Africans did things completely different, but to see these people as actually people. They had feelings, they had love, they had conquest, they had anger, they had stress, they had worries, they had concerns. Don't just see Egypt as just people who were building pyramids and doing all this glorious stuff, but don't see them that they were actually still people. And I think that's what we miss a lot of times when we talk about ancient Egypt.
All right, that is very important. And I'm going to put another question from there that I'm trying to understand now, in that irrespective of what the European would tell us about Egyptians, we know that we are the Egyptian. We, the people of Africa, are the Africans. Mm-hmm. There are not two. You cannot just recreate the people. No, we are what we are. So Egypt, at the point, disintegrated. A lot of people migrated to other parts of Africa because, of course, they are Africans. No, where do you want them to go? They can't go anywhere. No, these are people that have been moving from north, west, south of the continent. Just like, for example, in Europe, you have the European. You are the German. You go to French. You are still a European. You move from France to Italy. You are still the same people, no? So in the same way, Africans were moving all around, no?
Exactly. And it's not talked about, though. It's not talked about. If you think about it, as these invasions came into Egypt, and keep this in mind, Egypt was once a very tropical region. It was very much that part of the Nile Valley was very tropical. But over time, it became a desert. And people started migrating out of there due to famines, due to extreme weather conditions. People got out of there due to the floods that were happening in Aswan. People left Egypt, and more than likely they went south, where Narmer mentions that he came from the place of the moon, which people believe these ancient Egyptian people originated in the Uganda area. And they came up the Nile. In those days, they went south. But in these days today, they label it north. They went north to what they call Egypt and took this region that we call Egypt today. So Egyptians has always given reference to the south. They always have as the strength of their glory. Even the city of Memphis was in the south of Egypt. So that was the capital city of Egypt. So that was always known to be the strength of Egypt. And this was a part of Black Africa as well.